Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar hosted by Center for a Smart Future and iSocial on freedom and fairness in platform-mediated gig work. To kick things off, I invite Director and Co-founder of Center for a Smart Future, Anushka Vijayasinghe.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this Wednesday evening. It might be evening for most of you who are joining us, so good evening to all. And we also have a few who are joining from different time zones. It's a real pleasure to host this webinar together with iSocial in Bangladesh. We are from Center for a Smart Future and Colombo Urban Lab based in Colombo, Sri Lanka. And many of the organizations represented here today have been working on this agenda around platform work, platform-mediated gig work, in different ways, through research, through advocacy, activism, and so on. And the reason we are actually having this webinar this week is to coincide with the International Labour Organization, ILO's 114th International Labour Conference that's taking place in Geneva and has been over the last week. And particularly significant is that there is a convention on decent work in the platform economy that was on the table. And we thought it's a good opportunity to bring some Asian perspectives to this discussion, look at what evidence there is from a few of our countries. We have Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Cambodia, as well as look at some wider perspectives, global perspectives. And we have a professor from the UK, from University of Leeds, who's also joining us. So today's webinar will feature insights from each of these speakers in the spirit of trying to better understand how these issues are shaping up in our different contexts, but also to take a slightly wider perspective to look at how are these issues and policy challenges, regulatory challenges evolving globally. It's a real pleasure to co-host this with iSocial in Bangladesh, and we have Dr. Ananya Raihan, who will be one of the speakers from Bangladesh. We've had a long association for some time, starting off with a piece of South Asia focused research back in 2021, 2022. We also have Towfiqul Islam Khan, also from Bangladesh, and who is part of a regional project called Future Works, also looking at different aspects of this topic. We have Sythieng from Cambodia, who is a union leader, and we have Meghal Perera from Colombo Urban Lab, and Professor Vera Trappmann from my old university, Leeds University Business School, who will bring a global perspective. And actually we came across her work also because it was interesting how she was looking at the climate challenge, as well as the work that she leads with some colleagues at Leeds, called the Leeds Labour Index, which tracks platform work protests around the world. So we have a very nice mix today of policy researchers, academics, activists, union leaders, and hopefully it'll be a productive conversation. Just a heads up that we have kept this tight because we know everyone's busy, and it's roughly an hour, maybe just over an hour. We will have the majority of the session with remarks, around 8 to 10 remarks from each of our speakers. And towards the end, we'll have a little bit of time for taking some questions from you in the audience. We'll be taking these questions only from the chat. So my colleagues will remind you throughout to please put in any questions you have in the chat box. And we'll be sure to make some time to take those towards the end. So that's it from me for now, and back to my colleague Pumi.
Thank you, Anush. We will start off today's discussion by having on Meghal Perera. Meghal Perera is a research associate at Colombo Urban Lab, and she will be speaking on our work in Sri Lanka, particularly on the climate, on the intersection of gig and climate.
Thanks, Pumi. It's really exciting to be here with everyone. And I think that it's nice to kick things off from Colombo. Um, Obviously, the trends that we see in Colombo are not no different to many of the trends to do with gig work that we see all over the world, from opaque algorithms to a lack of social protection. So I'm sure that many of these things uh, will resonate with your experiences as well. Um, and I think one of the key things to start off is that I think our research has shown that gig work is increasingly not a part-time employment. Like I think 75% of gig workers we have interviewed in Colombo shared that they engage in gig work full-time, which means that even though gig work is really de facto full-time employment, workers don't enjoy the same safeguards as their former counterparts. So what I'm going to do in this presentation is talk a little bit actually about the climate impacts. And I think that even though the climate shocks and impacts aren't are by no means the only problem that gig workers face in Colombo, they definitely exacerbate existing vulnerabilities and things like a lack of social protection and labor protections, as I just mentioned. So I think what I'll do first is maybe provide a little bit of context about Colombo, which is our site, and I think that will help really set the tone of what kind of weather impacts we're talking about. So if we look at Colombo, it's kind of a unique city in some ways, and I think maybe some of our South Asian colleagues will also speak to the fact that Colombo is a little different to other South Asian cities. It has a lot of green spaces. It's really shaped by being a wetland city and a city by the coast. So that also has having this range of ecosystems has contributed to microclimate regulation. But that being said, there are increasing vulnerabilities due to climate change. And this is compounded by the fact that Colombo is really Sri Lanka's commercial hub and its commercial capital. So it is Sri Lanka's largest city. It is increasingly urbanizing, which is leading to increasing urban pressures, intensifying the urban heat island effect. And this is all intersected with climate change. And a little bit about Colombo's climate, because I think that what I think is interesting is that it is a tropical city, but what we have is also high temperatures and a rising heat, but also extremely frequent and intense rain. So if you just look at some of the figures on the slide. So for example, we have the temperature actually peaks in May, but it is quite stable between December and March, but we're seeing an increasing rise in this average temperature over time. And I think some studies have shown that since 2000, Colombo has moved from like a moderate heat stress to a high heat stress zone. But that is also compounded by the fact that it has a high number of rainy days. So January is the day with, I think, the least number of rainy days, like 6 rainy days. But it's quite common for maybe 5 months a year to have uh, to be rainy days, and there's also high levels of rainfall that are falling. And so there is a lack of seasonality in the sense that would be familiar to maybe some of our South Asian colleagues, where you have a distinct dry season and a distinct monsoon season, which sort of preps you when you're thinking about how to mitigate for climate impacts and climate shocks. So that's a slight variation in Colombo. And I think that it also means that outdoor workers are uniquely vulnerable because they are not only facing the climate shocks, but they are constantly adapting and then changing adaptations as a result of it. So let's move to the next slide. So this is kind of drawing from research that we've done with gig workers, and here we really mean ride sharing and delivery riders across 3 main apps. So that's Uber and the 2 local variants, Pick Me and Helago. And I think what we've found, and these are also interviews that have been conducted over the years um, with gig workers based in Colombo. And I think what we've noticed, an interesting initial observation is that unlike other outdoor workers, say for example, informal vendors or street cleaners, gig workers really did feel the heat. And if I talk about rising heat and extreme heat impacts first, they were really aware that heat was a problem, and we're not sure why they seem to have more awareness of this than other workers. It could be high literacy rates as well. But they really monitored the weather, for example. They were able to think about the weather in terms of temperature. And they really also registered the kind of cumulative effects that riding in hot weather had on their bodies. So the heat impacts that we've recorded so far really range, but it's things like extreme headaches, body aches, nausea and vomiting, severe skin rashes, which is, I guess, comes as no surprise. So there's a slew of health impacts and associated costs that come with those impacts. Another thing of note is the intense glare and blurred vision that they face while riding during times of heat, but also this tendency to actually meet with accidents because of drowsiness, which is which is a significant finding. Let's move to the next slide. So there's also these small opportunities associated with heat. So, for example, here we have a quote here where it tells you that there's a lot of that rides during hot weather are generally shorter, and there are more short rides because people really want to. People don't want to be walking in hot weather, but it's hard to say whether this really translates into economic opportunity because there are a lot of costs associated with heat. If you run a car, your petrol costs are going to be much higher. You might have a long time to rest because you're so fatigued after the rides you do take. So these are some of the impacts we're seeing with heat in particular. Let's move to the next slide. So similarly, when it comes to rain, there's obviously like severe impacts. There's also the threat of floods, which means that gig workers they really have to choose sometimes between their income and their well-being. And what they see again similarly is increase in rides and deliveries, and because people don't want to go out during the rain. But there's also increasing risk, right? Increasing risk of the vehicle being damaged, of slippery roads and accidents, falling trees, which is quite common in Colombo these days, damage to the vehicle if there is floods. So these really do sometimes prompt riders to just switch off the app and stay offline, to not come to work that particular day. And there was also this sense that it is, even though there is price surging and this is an economic opportunity that has to be balanced against the risk of driving during the rain, particularly when you don't have sufficient protection. Let's move to the next slide. And so just to think a little bit also about the gendered impacts of these shocks. Now we don't have a very high number. I think it's a very low number of female gig workers in ride sharing and delivery, but we are seeing kind of maybe 1 to 2% is some of the figures that have been cited. And when we do talk to women, there's also this issue of to what extent is the city made for you anyway? And how does that affect your ability as a gig worker to stay protected from climate shocks? So, for example, hydration is a big problem because we see that women don't have access to public washrooms. They might have like set washrooms that they use that they feel are safe and clean and convenient for them to use. But what we see is that in many cases, they can't be guaranteed that they'll use those washrooms, especially when they're on the road. Sometimes they often go home to use the washroom, which means a loss of income. So these are some of the and that this also translates to them drinking less water, which is obviously a problem when it comes to hot days and how you cope with extreme heat. Similarly, when it comes to rain, there's also problems as well. And I think there's an interesting, the other thing about the gendered impacts is, of course, women on their periods. So, for example, there's a lot of research to show, and this is something our field research also revealed, is that period symptoms and pains get much worse on hot days, which often prompts women not to drive on those days. Similarly, a lot of women spoke about how rainy days, the discomfort of driving with their period when their clothes are wet. The raincoats that are provided are not of good quality when they're provided by these platforms. So again, they opt to stay at home and not engage in their work. And this is, of course, compounding care burdens, and the kind of pressures that are also on women's time. Let's go to the last slide. So just a few kind of steps forward. I think that we are really interested in like how we can create public infrastructure that works for everyone. And this is really things like shaded rest areas, free drinking water, clean and gender segregated, widely available and accessible public bathrooms that are affordable to everybody. And it's really investing in infrastructure that can help everyone in the city. There's obviously a strong case for social protection and thinking about also climate-related social protection schemes, maybe social insurance, things like parametric insurance, and thinking about how we can leverage social protection to protect for climate shocks. Another key takeaway is that adaptation costs can't be just borne by workers, which is what is happening right now when substandard raincoats are issued, when there is a lack of places where people can hydrate. These costs are increasingly borne by workers, which is quite a high burden in the end. And lastly, I think there's just a case in a increasingly uncertain climate. This group of people who are in increasing precarity need to be better understood, and the dynamics between climate and their work needs to be better understood. So we really advocate for a strong evidence base to inform policy in the future. So I'll stop there. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Meghal, for your remarks. Next, we have Dr. Ananya Raihan, Chairperson of iSocial Bangladesh. And he will be speaking on the Bangladeshi perspective, specifically on the nexus between digital rights, platform governance, and gig work.
Thank you. It's my privilege to be here today with all of you. So as Anush mentioned that the ILC is happening in Geneva, and the Convention on Platform Economy is in discussion. So my deliberation will focus on the aspects mentioned by the MC, and particularly from a political economy perspective. So I'll focus on precarity first, and then I'll highlight a few issues within 8 to 10 minutes. So, so the precarity, so I'll start with precarity of the gig workers. A few of the things already well known through research works across the globe, and in Bangladesh we have been involved with the Fair Work project, and we did platform ranking for 3 years. And in certain cases, the platform ranking and advocacy improved the situation a little bit, but still we far lag behind in terms of ensuring proper working conditions for the workers. So to me, precarity in gig work is not a temporary problem. I would say that it's not also just a market failure. What we observed that the informality did not go away. Rather, we found that the digitalization of gig work formalized the informality and precarity. And it's a systematic outcome of how digital platforms accumulate value. First of all, platforms position themselves as technology intermediaries, avoiding employer obligation. And labor is classified as independent contracting, shifting the risk downward. Then algorithm replace managerial supervision, enabling control without accountability. And the state's regulatory silence creates a permissive environment for extraction. In Bangladesh, this dynamic is intensified by high unemployment, informal labor markets, and weak worker bargaining power. In a labor surplus economy like Bangladesh, there's a huge reserve army of labor who are young, urban, unemployed, and they're seeking any kind of income opportunities. And platform exploit this surplus. So they have lower entry barriers due to oversupply of riders, drivers, service providers. This oversupply leads to downward pressure on earnings, and downward pressures makes the workers accept long hours, unsafe conditions, and algorithmic discipline. So when labor supply exceeds demand, then capital gains leverage. So platform use this leverage to reduce incentives, increase commissions, externalize costs like equipment, fuel, maintenance, and data. So this is one major, I would say, point to note that there is a fundamental shift in economics where the employers do not just provide employment opportunity, but shift major fixed and variable cost to the workers. And the platforms also impose unilateral contract changes without any scope for bargaining or negotiations. So workers' precarity is therefore structurally backed into the labor market, not a side effect. So about the algorithmic management, so it is creating a new regime for labor control. So gig workers appear to be free, but their labor is governed by algorithmic command. Algorithms allocate rights, set fares, and rank workers. Customer ratings discipline behavior. Incentive structure push workers to work long hours. In Bangladesh's case, we found that up to 108 hours a worker need to work to have the income he or she needs. And also we observed that the deactivation functions as a digital firing without due process. So this is a new form of labor discipline, control without employment, and surveillance without responsibility. So in Bangladesh, where digital literacy is uneven, algorithmic opacity depends vulnerability for the workers. So the value extraction in platform-mediated gig economy, we found that it is asymmetrical and hidden. Platform exerts value through commission structure, where ride-sharing commission historically 25 to 30%. Even after reductions, platform retain significant margins. The data extraction, workers generate data like from routes, behavior, performance that platform monetize, and workers receive no share of this value. And platforms know everything about the worker, but workers do not know anything about the platform. The platforms externalize risk, like I've mentioned, that workers bear fuel price shocks, vehicle depreciation, equipment cost, accidents, harassment, customer fraud, and of course, income volatility. This is a classic neoliberal shift, I would say, where profits are privatized, risks are socialized downward onto the workers. And we also find that weak institutions which amplify the precarity. Platform workers are not recognized as employees or even as a distinct labor category under the labor law. No portable benefits or accident insurance, except some minimum schemes are there for from a few platforms, and there is no pension, and there is no social protection as per se. And also you observe that there is weak collective bargaining. Unionization is difficult, workers because worker fears retaliation. There are some informal direct messaging groups and a few, especially the ride-sharing workers are trying to form union, but as the gig work is not recognized by the labor law, the formation of union is not possible legally. And we also observed here that there is regulatory fragmentation. Like Bangladesh Road Transport Authority, which is monitoring the ride-sharing components of the gig economy, BRTL regulates it, but they do not regulate the labor conditions. The ICT division regulates digital platforms, but not employment relations. And Labor Ministry has no jurisdiction over gig work because it's not part of the labor law. So this fragmentation creates a governance vacuum where platforms operate with minimum accountability. Like the previous speaker mentioned, Meghal mentioned about the precarity for women, and we also observed that there are women face layered vulnerabilities. We have gig workers for home service, delivery, and micro work, and we observed that they face harassment from customers. They have safety risk during travel. They lack safe space for waiting or rest. They face social stigma around public-facing work and algorithmic penalties for refusing unsafe jobs. So what we see that patriarchal norm and platform incentives create a double burden for the women. One interesting observation from Bangladesh's ecosystem that there is a resistance strategy from the some gig workers. And there is a phenomena we call CAP, that is direct rights between that driver and customer avoiding the platform. So the cap allows to avoid platform commissions. It increases take-home income, reduces algorithmic dependence, but it also undermines platform governance, increases safety risk, and reflects deep mistrust between workers and platform. So cap is a response to structural injustice, and it's not worker misconduct. So that we need to recognize. So the precarity persists because platform benefits from flexible low-cost labor, consumer benefits from cheap rides and fast delivery, government benefit from digital innovation narratives and employment which reduces risk of social chaos. Only workers, they lack collective power to negotiate better terms. So this creates a political equilibrium where no actor has strong incentives to disrupt the status quo, except workers who have least bargaining power. So what to do? The ideas or recommendations, I would say that it is common for most of the economies, including, I would say, Sri Lanka and Cambodia. So what government can do? So government can rebalance the power. It can recognize platform workers in labor law, mandate algorithmic transparency. It's very important. It can introduce portable social protection, regulate commissions and minimum earnings, and create a platform work regulatory authority. Platforms also need to share value, not just risk, which may ensure living wages after cost. Currently, to earn living wage, a worker need to work double or triple of their minimum working hour. The platform needs to provide insurance and safety nets, a transparent incentive structure. Workers' council need to be formed so that there can be scope for co-governance and protect workers' data. Civil society, I would say, also has very important role in this regard. They can support worker organizing, provide legal aid and digital rights literacy, conduct independent audits like Fair Work model, and advocate for gender responsive policies. And of course, for workers, it's important that they can form association, cooperatives, and union, document unfair practices, negotiate collectively, and build digital right awareness. Finally, I would like to say that precarity in Bangladesh's platform economy is not just a technological problem, it's a political economic one. And it emerges from power asymmetries, institutional gaps, and value extraction models that prioritize platform growth over worker well-being. To ensure freedom and fairness, Bangladesh must shift from a platform-centric to a worker-centric digital economy. So I'll stop my talk here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raihan, for your comments and your valuable remarks. I just wanted to do a quick reminder that we will be having some time at the end of the discussion to take on some questions. We will only be taking questions from the Zoom chat, so please feel free to post any questions that you have there. Next, we have Mr. Towfiqul Islam Khan, the Additional Director of Research from the Center for Policy Dialogue. Mr. Khan will also be speaking on Bangladesh, but drawing more specifically from their ongoing research as well as their completed research. Over to you.
No, thank you very much. I think Dr. Raihan has made my job easier, has given a very extensive overview of the gig work in Bangladesh. I think overall, if you look at the global experience, gig work, the way it started, it has also evolved. It started with the concept that people will come in, will work part-time and then just, or maybe a bridging employment. But it increasingly, we have seen not only in Bangladesh, but across Asia, it is becoming a permanent job solutions for many workers. And obviously, we have a very large informal sector where more people are piling up with this new sector. So I think in a way, this is a recognition that we need to have in the conceptualization of worker rights or overall work conditions. Um, so my theory of change would suggest that we start with recognition, translate that recognition into policies, and then find out the possible actions that can be implemented and which should be inclusive in a way. So we specifically looked into the social insurance part of gig workers in Bangladesh. In the study that I'm doing, it is pretty much at a very early stage at this moment, but we could identify this problem of future of works in Bangladesh. And in Bangladesh, we see that mostly this gig work jobs are taken by the young youth segment, and mostly they are what we called at least middle skilled with some education, and they are taking up these jobs which are becoming to some extent permanent. So the gap analysis that we have done, we have seen that we are currently, to be honest, are governed by Labor Act 2006, which has amended, has been amended in recent time, particularly after the Labor Commission proposals, but still defines workers in a way that excludes gig workers to a large extent. So, as Dr. Raihan said, he was a member of the Labor Reform Commission. He will recognize that legal cover for gig workers still has its lacuna in terms of translating it into policies. We also have recently had our employment policy in 2022, and we can see there is no specific mechanism to include uh, the nature of gig work explicitly in that policy. Also, there are some mentions in terms of freelancing and others. So the recognition is growing, but nothing much is reaching to platform workers. So whatever we have, and we are looking into 5 platforms, particularly in the area of ride hailing and food delivery. And 2 of these companies are ride hailing services. One has both, and 2 has 2 have food delivery services. So we kind of trying to understand what is there in the existing individual firms policy, and we could see that even in all of those companies, certain accident benefits are there, but nothing on health or pension or leave. But whatever accidental cover they are offering to the workers are they are basically voluntary, trip only, and of course non-portable. So increasingly, what we have seen that there is also a low demand to actually workers getting included on that part. And as Dr. Raihan has mentioned, the Transport or Road Authority and can actually have a kind of a semi-structured governance framework which can bring in the ride hailing services or workers to some extent in that framework. But the food delivery companies are completely at this moment out of any such specific governance structure. So we talked with the are willing to join a social insurance program. What we have found that they have a very low base pay, and very low commission. They have to work longer hours. And accidents and thefts are also routine risk. I mean, theft is something they face every now and then, but no such coverage in that way. So that indicates when we talked with them whether they will be interested to be included or be part of any social insurance program. They were interested, but they have a relatively lower ability to pay for those services. So we are now trying to understand, and we are still working on it, whether this demand supply gap can be bridged with a policy intervention that will include not only the services or platforms, but also the workers and certain service providers like insurance companies, and bring them together under a government framework that can provide them with a national umbrella kind of a safety net in terms of insurance and pension scheme. We would also like to investigate in the coming days that whether our national pension scheme or our national insurance policy can bring them together so that this new segment of workers can also be covered in the coming days. Now, what we see that there are a certain entry policy making, and the recently elected government do mention about creating jobs, recognizing the new forms of job, and encouraging to use that opportunity to expand employment opportunities. But to be honest, when they go for worker rights, they have very little to offer, at least at the moment, explicitly to gig workers. So but there is an opportunity coming with certain policies that are related to this segment can be reviewed under the new government that we have now. And so we strongly feel that there is a need to actually expand our discussions, policy discussions, and research findings in that ecosystem, in that spectrum, so that these segments of worker can be actually participate in the forthcoming policy revision or discussions. So we definitely would like to contribute as part of that, and our research would like to mediate the negotiations or policy entry points among the different actors that are required to come together. So we thank you for giving us this opportunity. This is, of course, a special occasion, and international occasions are also good opportunities for countries like Bangladesh to actually flag new ideas and ideas that are not widely discussed. So hopefully we will come back again with our findings and how we can bring the different actors together and their perspectives and find a solution as part of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Khan, for your remarks. Next, to provide perspective from a union representative and to talk about the Cambodian perspective and the experiences there around gig work and labor protections, we are joined by Mr. Tuy Sythieng, General Secretary of the Cambodian Food and Service Workers Federation. Over to you, Mr. Sythieng.
Good afternoon, brother and sister. And this is my great honor to be a part of our section tonight. Let I say a great thing from Phnom Penh, Cambodia, and And I also sorry that I could not open the camera on that time because the internet connection from here is not a good way. Um, on behalf of the trade union in Cambodia, I also would like to share you the first of all, I just want you to know my trade union first. We are the trade union in food and service sector, and we work to organize and empowerment the worker in the food sector, food processing, food deliveries worker, and also we have our member from the entertainment sector as well. And in Cambodia, there are I can say like it start from the COVID-19 has been started. The food deliveries worker has been like come to investment in the capital city in Phnom Penh city and also in another capital city like Siem Reap province and other majority city as well in Cambodia. In that time, okay, you just got on the slide, so please go continue to uh, the number three, the third slide. Next slide, please. Okay, I just want to highlight here about the labor markets in Cambodia. Like before, it's the labor market is like we have a lot of kind of the labor markets, but the labor market in the previous is even have a lot of job, but the job is not the choice for the workers in Cambodia, because like the working condition, wages, and also the the protection in the sector is not really support to the worker. And after the COVID-19, the market, the labor market in Cambodia is become very narrow. Like a lot of the government sector and a lot of the other manufacturing worker has been dismissed from their job, and they very like they don't get any essential and decent work nowadays. So and after the food, the platform and the gigs work have been invested in Cambodia, so a lot of workers have to start the job in the food delivery and also in other gig sector like a logistic company as well that they have been work in Cambodia. And in that time, the gig worker and particularly about the platform food delivery worker, even they get a job as the worker, but in the realities in Cambodia, they did not recognize as a worker. They just they use another term. It's called a partner. I think this is not just in Cambodia. Maybe in other Asia and the Southeast Asia country are the same situation. Like did not recognize the worker as the worker, and they try to use another term of the word like partner. Can you go to the next slide, please? And when they not become to a worker, they become to a partner. So there are a lot of issues that have been in touch with them. Like the first one is the in Cambodia, it's the labor market is very narrow and tight now, and they also use the machine. They start auto machine, and they try to lay off the worker, and the auto machine has been displaced the worker in the highest number now. And the workers in Cambodia, they also like they getting to other trap. It's about the debt, in the debt issue. Like in Cambodia, you may also heard about the scamming, and the scamming is not only targeting to the foreigner. They also use the online loan. It's kind of the online loan that is the kind of the scamming that attacks to the women's workers in the Cambodia as well. And also another thing is about the shrinking space for the trade union, and the bargaining power has been left. The government is not really accepted or provide a free of the worker to organize the trade union, and also they are the leg of the social insurance, social protection, social assistance, and also there are no law to guarantee the wage for the worker. And the women's worker, in especially in the platform food deliveries worker, they cannot access to the the labor rights, and they also could not access to the maternity protection, and those workers have been like they also get the discrimination and also the age discrimination to them as well. Go to the next slide, please. And here I just would like to share some of the other situation of the food deliveries worker. Like the first picture is about the food deliveries worker in the Food Panda company. They are the Japanese company that has been, they falling dead because of the heat stress, and also they get the long working hour under the sunburn. So they get, they fall down and they get that without any compensate and current protection from the company or from the system of the social protection. And another picture is about to become food deliveries workers in Cambodia. I think maybe in other countries as well, the worker have to pay very high amount. The first they have to pay for their motorcycle, their phone, they telephone, and also they pay to the company for the register to get the license for to become a food deliveries worker. So in Cambodia, we have research, and we meet with the worker and we conduct all the information from them, and they say that to become a food delivery workers in Cambodia, they have to have the money at least 2,000 US dollar in their hand to become the food delivery worker. Because if they don't have that money, they could not have something to purchase a motor and to purchase a smartphone, and to pay for a company register to get a license after food deliveries company. And another thing is about the maternal protection of the women in the food deliveries company. They get nothing from the maternal protection. Even the company has no policy to protect them, and the government and the state has no policy to protect the women in the maternity protection. Even the maternity leave have absent for them, and also other child care benefit also absent for the women's worker in this sector. So there are a lot of issue because the women's worker, they have to bring the kid to riding under the sunburn along with them to to earn the income, because if they could, if they don't do that, they will could not survive to live in the city. And another pictures we also showing about the procedure how to become a food delivery worker. That the worker, they have to have their national ID card, and they also has to to create a bank, to register with a bank, to have the bank account for redact the money for the company, and they need to come for register and get some training. It's a short-term training, and then they can access to the riding for delivery the food. But at that time, the worker, they have to install their money into the company wallet. If they don't have to install their money into the company wallet, they would not able to receive other the order from the platform company. And in this case, we also mentioned about the algorithmic management. That's some of the food company, they were tracking. They use the GPS tracking to the worker to to monitor all the time as you're working, and they also require the worker to working about the working hour. They limit the working hour for this worker as well. Like for the Food Panda company and also for the other company from Singaporean, they also limit the working hour for the worker. Like they request the worker to work 10 hours per day. Even they have the the limited like it's kind of the labor contract. They have the labor contract and they have the particular working hour. But this company is not recognize this worker as the worker. They still reject them as the worker, and they still recognize them only the partner, and those workers have no access to the labor rights. And another picture that I have been showing about, like a spider map. It's not a spider map, but it's about the route of the worker, the food deliveries worker who delivers the food in every day of their work. They in the total, distance is around 300 kilometers every day. Like they have to travel every day with the 300 kilometer. So this is very long way if we looking to they drawing the map about their working. Can you go to the next slide, please? And this is I just showing you about some of their campaign of the company that they try to reaching to the people in the city to understand more, not to understand, but just try to promote like their service has been covered in each city as well. Can you continue for the next slide? Please. Okay, so I just want to highlight about our action to fight that our action has to fight for a better of the worker in the food the platform food deliveries worker. Like in now we try to conduct the organizing them to form a trade union, but a right to form a trade union in Cambodia have not easily because the workers in the food delivery company have not been recognized as the worker, and they have been not recognized to form a trade union. And in that case, the worker is still fight so hard. Even we could not organize them to form a trade union because the law has banned them. So we try to organize them to be a group of the worker and to be an association, and then we can conduct some of our action to fighting back to this system, like to we have conduct the research and we have conduct the worker solidarity action to submit petition to the government to like our petition has been mostly focused on require to the government and the employer in to recognize the platform food deliveries worker as the worker, and also to request for social protection to provide for the worker in the platform economy, and also we asking the government to provide support on the maternal protection to the women's worker who work in the platform food deliveries company in Cambodia as well. And our action, we also linking to provide some of the capacity building to the worker as well. Like we try to provide them to understand more about the right to organize a trade union, and also we try to provide the capacity building to them to understand about the labor rights and also social protection, and also we linking them to understand about the international labor conference. Like we try to to bring our group and our team to advocate for the ILC in last year and this year as well. That is our action. This is we call like our action to fighting back on this case as well. And I can summarize about what I have say about what I have mentioned is the food deliveries worker, they in generally they no any protection, no any protection here is mean they don't have a national policy, or they don't have a national law to protect the workers. So that is the situation of them now. And some of our women's worker from this sector, they have to say like this. They say like other worker, they just access to work as the worker, but for the food deliveries worker as them, they just pay the money to the company to become a modern slavery. So this is I want to share here. So thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you, Mrs. Sythieng, for your remarks. Just a quick reminder that we will be having a question and answer session momentarily. So if you have any questions, to drop them on the Zoom chat. We will now be hearing from Professor Vera Trappmann, who is a professor in comparative employment relations at the University of Leeds. She will be speaking on the work of the Leeds Index of Platform Labor Protests and the findings from their research on how, where, and why platform workers protest.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Anush, for inviting me. It's a huge pleasure to be here. And I've learned already so much about the examples from your countries. It's really exciting. And I hope we can stay in touch and continue this conversation. I've brought some results today for you. So if you could give me the first slide, please. In Leeds, we have set up a so-called Leeds Index, which is the attempt to document platform protests, so protest of platform workers globally. And we started this a couple of years ago, funded by a German trade union think tank. And we have gone back basically to when protest kicked off in 2017. So we have most data collected from 2017 up to now. We are a big team based in Leeds at the business school. And if you have a chance to come over to the UK, please say hello. Next slide, please. And I'll give you a quick overview of our approach and of our results. And what I've done for today is I looked in particularly into the data for South Asia and Southeast Asia, so that some of the countries we talk about are covered. But you will see that we haven't many protests from Cambodia or Bangladesh. And I'm really curious if this is because of our methodology or if your campaigning basically means that there is no documentation of the protest going on. So yeah, next slide, please. Something that is really important to us is that the evidence that we provide can really be used by policy actors and campaigners and trade unions and workers themselves. Methodologically, we have worked with GDELT, which as an interface screens online news worldwide and which can be translated in real time from over 100 languages. In some countries, we know there is no news reporting about protest. So for China, we were lucky that the China Labor Bulletin documented protest of workers. But unfortunately, the organization has been closed, and we were only able to get data until 2020. So since 21, China is not included in the data set anymore. We started with 4 sectors that we looked into: ride-hailing and food delivery, which is where most of the protest is happening, and then courier services and grocery deliveries as well. Next slide, please. So what we try to understand from each protest event that we find information from is what type of action have we been seeing? And we differentiate here, has it been a strike or a lock-off? Has it been a demonstration, or has it been a legal action? And then, interestingly, have we seen some kind of form of institutionalization? So has the protest led to the formation of a trade union or a collective agreement? Or if this institution exists in countries, has it led to the formation of a works council? Next slide, please. And because it's so important for us that this data is available, what happens is on our website, Leeds Index, you can basically go into an interface, type in the city where you live, or type in the name of a particular company that you're interested in, and you will find if there has been some protest. Next slide, please. So here I did this for you. I typed in Berlin, where I'm currently for work at the moment. And then you would see the city and that there have been 16 protest events in Berlin. Next slide. And then you will find more information. So was it against gorillas or Lieferando? What type of company was it? And what type of action was it? So you could do this for your countries, and if you know about a protest and it's not on the database, then please get in touch. On the website, we have also a form that you can fill in, or you can email me. It would be really good to be as substantial as possible. So something that hasn't been news reported won't be in because we couldn't find it. But if you knew about it, please get in touch. Next slide, please. So now I have the pleasure here to show you, this is the kind of geographical spread of the protest of platform workers. And you see that it's concentrated in some world regions, and it's really interesting to see if there are patterns of protests that differ across world regions. This is what we are currently doing in a research project that we try to understand what type of actors are involved in what kind of protest, and what role do informal trade unions play, what role do mainstream trade unions play. So there is more to watch. Next slide, please. Here you will see in the next slide a kind of development over time. So here you see some from when we started mapping, that there have been some peaks, and in particular during Corona or COVID-19, there has been spikes of protest, which were mostly related to health and safety or missing health and safety measures. Next slide, please. Here you see that the protest events per year have slightly declined. Partly this is due to that since 2021, we don't have the Chinese protest events in the dataset anymore, but they made up to 12–13% of our own data. So that's not the only reason. We could probably assume that there has been a slight decline in the protest activity. And that could have to do with some of the gains and successes that protests have also achieved. So we have seen a lot of legal cases where workers have won against companies. We have seen collective agreements where working conditions have been regulated. So this is hopefully, and at the moment we are looking more into the outcomes of the protest. This is hopefully due to worker success. Next slide, please. Here you see the countries with the most protest activities going on. It's the United States and the United Kingdom and India, where we see most of the workers' protest. And companies, most of the protest was directed against Uber, which is probably a surprise given the dominance of the multinational ride-hailing company, and then Deliveroo with the courier services. But then you see it's in total we have mapped 72 countries and 67 companies. And whenever they merge or whenever there's a new company coming up, then this will be included in the data set. Next slide, please. So here for this presentation, I looked into the numbers for South Asia and Southeast Asia. And you see something really interesting here, especially when I compare this with the overall global data, that the main driver for the protest of platform workers is around pay. And you see in quite a huge number of the cases, in the majority of the cases of protest, it is around pay, and much less so around regulatory issues. And that mirrors analysis that we have done for the global data set, where we saw that although there is a lot of discussion among academics and the science about the algorithmic control and how much is that changing the type of work, how this is diminishing workers' power. But the concerns of workers themselves is pretty much around like in the non-digital labor world, around the distribution of the gains from workers' work and how the surplus is distributed. Health and safety does also play a role, and this is regionally quite dispersed. So I'm really glad that you talked about the health implications of a lot of this outside work, in particularly for couriers. And climate change will intensify the health and safety issues of this work. Interestingly, if we look at the actors, so who is organizing the protest, in Southeast Asia and South Asia is mainly informal group of workers. So the level of institutionalization is rather low. Then if it's not informal workers, it's grassroots unions who get involved or workers who have found a kind of collective. Mainstream trade unions are much less involved in organizing the protests. And this is regionally quite, this varies across regions. And over time, I can say we have seen that while at the start it was mainly informal group of workers and the role of trade unions, this was probably 30% of the cases where trade unions were involved in protest, and split quite evenly between grassroots unions and mainstream unions in the overall picture of the global workers' protest. But you can see here that this varies. But in the overall picture, over time, the number of events where mainstream unions got involved have increased. So we see some kind of mainstreaming of workers' protest in the platform economy. In the region that we're talking about here, in Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Pakistan, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam, which I've included into these world regions after the ILO, demonstrations were the most common way of processing protest, as well as lockoffs. There were not much legal action compared to the US, where we see much more legal action, and there were a few cases of institutionalization. Next slide, please. Here you see the development over time for the region. It is interesting to see some spikes, which are not only the COVID-19 period here in April 20, but earlier on as well, and then in October 23. And there it would be really interesting to get your kind of views on what caused these spikes. And next slide, please. Here you see the countries with most of the protests in the region. So unexpectedly, India, with being the country where we see most of the strikes globally. Then we have Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia. And as I said, in Pakistan and Bangladesh, we didn't see most. Please let me know if we missed something. And the number of top 10s against which the protest has been addressed. Yeah, next slide, please. if you want to learn more about our results and analysis, so on the website, we have reports that we have done for various organizations. We did an early one for the International Labour Organization. We did some for the Friedrich Ebert Foundation, a political foundation here in Germany, which funded us at the start. We did something for the ETUI, for the European Trade Union Institute. And we have also our more academic publications that do a deeper dive into the kind of patterns that we see of protest. And next slide, please. If you want to see some of those papers, you can download them there. Next slide, please. And this is, please, if you don't want to write an email, we have this crowdsourcing, submit a form. And next slide, please. You can also follow us on the website or sign up for a newsletter if you want to stay in touch. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity to give you a very quick snapshot of what this database can do. And I hope that this is really useful for your work as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Trappmann, for your remarks. And now on to Anushka to pose a couple of questions that have come through the Zoom chat.
Thank you very much to all of you. I think we have a few questions that have come in the chat, and we'd like to take them now before we move to a close. So I'm going to first ask Ananya to just share any thoughts you have to what Professor Trappmann, she showed some numbers. Any responses, any reactions to the Bangladesh numbers? Is it simply a matter of reporting, or what trends with protest are you seeing in Bangladesh? I know it also comes in the context of a lot of people's uprising politically, economically in general. Could you just briefly share a few thoughts in response to Vera's data on protest? Ananya, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I think there might be some underreporting in case of Bangladesh. I personally know a few protests happened, and mostly in the ride-hailing business against Uber, Pathao particularly. And those protests are very much targeted for reduction of the commission. And also for Foodpanda, where some algorithmic rules which pushed the workers to take excessive risk during delivery. So what we'll do from iSocial data sets, the research wing of iSocial, find those occasions and populate your system. I think that would be helpful. Good. And also I have a question I put into the remarks. Yes. That do you think that, Vera, that European legislation play any role in terms of improving working conditions while it is recognizing the workers as employee? And we are looking into it, and we are trying to do advocacy in Bangladesh whether similar kind of legislation is possible in near future. And does it also play a role in terms of reduction of protests in Europe? Thank you.
Do you want me to answer, or does Towfiqul wants to come in first? Or
Tawfiq, anything to add, or shall we move to Vera?
Just a quick reflection based on what we have discussed today. One of the things that we have to consider that when we are talking about this platform-based gig work, it is not necessarily a national subject in many ways, because many of these companies are actually located globally or internationally. So while we look into the national policy framework and rights, there should be an increasing demand to have a global rule-based system to ensure rights for gig works, or at least there should be a general framework. ILO is definitely well placed to advocate for adoption of those uh, frameworks at the global and as well as at the national level. And as we would see that globally, European Union usually has been a champion in these causes. So any thoughts on that? And many, in fact, some of the companies are actually registered. Mother company is registered in European Union. So a thought on that.
Yeah, I think let's go over to you, Vera, also because there's a question, the question that Ananya posed about the European legislation. So let's have a remark from you on that. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, the difference between self-employed or being an employee makes a huge difference. And then if you are an employee, that gives you access to full rights. And in the case of Germany, where the workers won the fight to be employees, this then gave them the access to founding works councils, and the works councils then were at company level able to, or fighting to improve their kind of working conditions when it comes to equipment. So those questions that we had also, who's actually paying for the bike, who pays for the repairs, who pays for the bags. Those are then, with experience, gives a much better ground for the protection of working conditions of the workers. And there was one other question for me in the chat. So we haven't had any response from the platforms that we conducted data for, but because our data source are the newspapers in the respective countries, so it could be local newspapers, national newspapers, it could be trade union websites, and this is then where there could be a problem of underrepresentation as well. If it doesn't show up in the news, then it doesn't show up in our database unless our network has fed in more events or more precise information about what happened, what wasn't reported.
Okay, thank you. We just have two more that I'd like to take. I'm not sure this one whether anyone here actually has the information. So the UK Supreme Court declined to extend worker protections to delivery workers, but recognized ride-hailing drivers as workers. However, the distinction between these appears difficult to reconcile. What factors do you think shape the decision for ride-hailing? And what simple lessons can Asian countries draw from here? I think they're referring to that Aslam versus Uber case, perhaps. Any thoughts on that, this recognizing ride-hailing drivers as workers? Delivery, yeah. So any thoughts there on this? Because this UK's case seems to be a bit of a landmark case that gets referred a lot. Maybe Vera, to you.
Yeah, I would have to think about what lessons does that mean for Asian countries. I'm happy to come back to that. So maybe Tamina or others on this call who want to reflect on this particular UK case, I would be happy to arrange another call where we could have some kind of brainstorming about this. We also have colleagues who did do extended work on the UK and followed the developments with research over some particular years, so we could invite them as well. if that is helpful.
Okay, thank you. That's very, very generous. Ananya, to you, briefly.
Yeah, quick remarks. I think the UK case is a manifestation that how competition also matters in terms of recognition of the workers. So for the ride hailing, it's a direct competition with the taxi companies. So that is one reason that it is not recognized. But in food delivery, there is no previous competition in terms of food delivery. So that's why it was easier for the decision that it can be recognized as a worker. But we need to dig deeper in this regard. And definitely that can be an occasion for us to also, bit by bit, we can make progress in this regard in our countries, where we can refer to particular cases and make our case stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananya. I think I'm also, conscious that in addition to this Supreme Court case, which has, sent a lot of, spread a lot of interesting ideas on what legislation, regulation could look like, we're also seeing a lot of countries now take legislative or regulatory steps. So in fact, in our social media post today, we posed the question, because a lot of folks here seems to think we shouldn't do anything about it. So our question was, would Sri Lanka be unusual in introducing safeguards for gig workers? And obviously the answer is no, and we kind of highlighted at least 10 cases where this is happening, ranging from India at a national level to India at a state level, Rajasthan, Karnataka, etc., but also Colombia, Brazil, Spain, of course the EU, Malaysia, Singapore. So I think there's a lot that we can learn for latecomers in this, or newcomers into this, like Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, around what sensible rounded regulation might look like. We started off today with Colombo, so I'm just going to see if Meghal has anything to add, also because of this very interesting hypothetical question from Mandu, and also the link to the question of protest. Any thoughts, Meghal? You can see the question in the chat.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of an indictment of the transport system that doesn't cater to a particular class of people, kind of, especially with the import restrictions on vehicles as well. So I do think definitely they would notice if they're so reliant on gig workers. I think they would definitely notice. But I do think also what is interesting is that it is not as kind of a elite use as I think we think. So we work with a lot of low income communities, especially working mothers, people who work in the garment sector, people who work as chefs or do night work, that are actually, this type ride hailing has been a game changer for them in terms of traveling safely and securely. So I don't think it's as black and white actually as rich use Uber, poor drive Uber. And yeah, I just want to point out that distinction. But I do think, yes, of course, I mean, they're becoming the backbone of transport. And yeah.
Thank you, Meghal, and thank you to all of our speakers today, and Sythieng, also to you, because you're actually on the ground working with these workers, supporting their efforts to improve their living conditions and working conditions. So thank you to all of you who joined from different places. Thank you to also our audience. This really is an attempt to not just start a conversation, it's to continue conversations that we have been having, Ananya and us, also around what does fairness and freedom look like with platform-mediated gig work in our part of the world, and also linking back to where we started, which is this proposed decent work convention around platform labor. We'll all be watching that very closely. It'll have implications. It's the first attempt at global standard setting, but we also know that there is a lot of lobbying that's happening with platforms to push back on some of these or amend. So it'll be good to watch as this evolves, and hopefully we can continue to collaborate with colleagues in Asia, and also with folks like Professor Trappmann and the work they're doing around tracking protests, because that offers us insights not just into the number of absolute protests, but what are the protests really about? Is it on algorithms? Is it on occupational safety and health? As well as who is organizing. So a lot of interesting insights, and hope if anyone has data to add to it, as she invited us to submit those and enrich that database. Thank you very much everyone for joining, and have a good evening or a good rest of the day where you are. And of course,
Thank you.
Ananya and iSocial team for joining us to co-host this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.